Great morning.
Great morning.
All right. We're here with Jim Sekulich, Brad Sekulich, and Ken Sekulich. Guys, how you doing?
Good.
Doing good.
I understand that you guys are a small business owner. What do you have?
Doc's Riverside Tap House in Machias, Washington.
Terrific. Now, I understand that you've encountered some turbulence and problems with the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board.
We have.
And as I understand it, we were here today because we have an administrative appeal. And just for the viewers' understanding, I am a non-equity member of this LLC because I advise them on other administrative things above and beyond their issues with LCB. So anyway, back to this. I understand that you guys got a suspension that was tied in with the COVID masking mandate.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we have argued all along that they didn't have authority. The Liquor and Cannabis Board didn't have authority to do that, but we're going to go back to that in a minute. Why don't you tell us kind of what happened along the way to bring us to this point now in this administrative appeal where we are in this Snohomish Superior Court in front of Richard T. Okrent. Okay.
Basically, February 17th, we received our first ABN related to COVID,
No masks.
no masks, compliance at Doc's Riverside Tap House. And Matthew Stevenson contacted me the day before asking me for my son's, Brad and Ken's, personal cell phone numbers.
Okay.
And said he wanted to talk to them. I got off the phone with Matthew, called to give Brad a heads up that Matthew Stevenson, our code enforcement officer for Snohomish County, was going to be contacting him, and he had beat me to the punch and had called Brad and informed him that he in fact wanted to talk with he and Ken the next day, and they made an appointment for 11 o'clock February 17th to hold a meeting to talk. Well, in fact, at that meeting, their intent was not to just talk, it was to serve an AVN deceptively. I was never informed as a managing member of Doc's Riverside Tap House, formerly known as Raccoon Hill LLC, that they were in fact going to be serving an AVN.
Right.
And I was denied the opportunity to be there as a result of that.
Yes, and at a subsequent point, we came to find out through the discovery process that after they allegedly issued a suspension to you, their own staff were not certain that the suspension had even been issued. We saw that in an email. Could you tell us about that, sir?
Absolutely. After the AVN had been served, LCB came to suspend our license. And there's video that we have of this actual event that you can hear the voices, mine and the two officers. I had never met these two officers. I've later learned that one is Lieutenant Paul Vanderwolf, and the other one is our code enforcement officer, Matthew Stevenson. They parked across the street from Doc's Riverside Tap House, came across the street over to me, and one of them elbow bumped with me, did the COVID elbow bump with me. And I informed them that I would like to talk to them, and they said, if you want to talk to us, you can talk to us as we're posting this suspension notice on your door. And I said, no, I'd like to talk to you prior to that. And at that time, Lieutenant Paul was back with me, refusing to talk to me. Neither one of them had identified who they were. And I later learned Matthew Stevenson made his way towards a door to go post a suspension notice on the door when Lieutenant Paul called him back and said that they're leaving and that they would be back with the sheriff. And I informed them, I'm glad you're going to have the sheriff. I invited the sheriff to be here as well. That's a paraphrase.
And all this is on video, correct?
All this is on video.
Right.
And we
Now,
submitted this video in the hearings with hearing officer Terry A. Shue, an administrative
law judge, and he basically he turned it around and implied that there was something negative about the fact that they were running video, as if they were going to what? document
crime
a crime happening? It's ridiculous.
There was no crime. There was no threat. Everybody there was just there in support.
Yeah, and then they had an opportunity to bring. They had 3 deputy sheriffs that they could have used to come back to post it. They
Well,
never
we later
did.
learned. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Continue on with what happened after that.
Anyway, they said that they would be back later to post a suspension. They never came back.
Well, they did come back to trick you, didn't they?
That was the next day.
Well, they didn't come back to post anything.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't come back to post the suspension notice on the door, which we later have recently, on February 16th, we received an email from Matthew Stevenson. And in this, Matthew Stevenson says suspension signs are required to be posted and an alcohol inventory needs to be confirmed.
Neither of which they did the first
They
time.
didn't do either of these on our first alleged suspension. We continued to operate based on them not posting that on our door. And they later came in and bought beer from us. Well, if they're able to come in and buy beer from us, they're able to come in and post a suspension on our door too.
Hello.
Neither they didn't do. Anyway, they come on and bought beer, and when they're saying we were suspended without suspension notice on the door, informing the public, we operated in good faith. Brain fart.
Yeah, I know. You did all the other COVID
We
things.
did all
venting,
the other
yeah.
criteria, and ultimately they send us another notification, AVN, saying our suspension was going to be 15 days because we hadn't followed their whatever. But
in the meantime, did you have occasion to see an email, an internal email, where there was confusion about the whole thing?
yes.
Tell us about that.
Not only were we confused about the suspension being held, that we actually had internal
Email
LCB email documents where there were 2 officers that were also confused whether the suspension had been served correctly or not.
And whether or not it had started. Well,
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
so you had that, and then so now the thing is, we'd argued all along that they didn't have authority, that LCB didn't have authority, because when you look at the whole thing started because of an emergency mandate from Governor Inslee. Okay,
Right.
now I had said nowhere in that mandate is the LCB mentioned. They have a huge problem with usurping authority. That's on the cannabis cases that I'm working on my own and looking at the other cannabis cases that are going on. It's a similar issue where they usurp authority that they don't have, and so we're going to get to that in 1 second before we sign off with this pretty document, and we're going to show you. But I had said, look, guys, if you just look at it's not a statute, but it's an order. The health boards are the ones who are supposed to enforce this. And I even included an example in the administrative process, at which point I could represent. Okay, now we showed where Flowers Cafe, a place I used to frequent down in U District, they got hit with the COVID violation for not masking properly as well. The health board does that, and I called the governor's office and asked them myself, who enforces these emergency proclamations, and they were like, oh, the local police and the health boards. Duh. All right. So now, after Terry Shute reamed them in the administrative process, a couple days later, Chandra Brady, who is the enforcement and education walk there, publicly admitted something. Let's see if we can throw that to the people. Hold on a second here. And this is massive. You mind if I just read it?
Sure.
All right. The LCB, January 27, 2022, cannabis licensees. Chandra Brady, Enforcement and Education Division Director, regarding retail cannabis safety. Now, it applies across the board. The bottom line is the LCB does not have emergency response authority or jurisdiction for a criminal investigation. All right, those are to be held in the disjunctive. All right, so that's all you need to hear right there, because the orders from Inslee, that order is an emergency order. So what they're doing now is, I'm trying to find these guys a lawyer. They're trying to find a lawyer. When you go into court, they say a corporation is not a person except when they want it to be, like Citizens United. All right, then that's a person, okay, with respect to free speech, but it's not a person with respect to to coming into court, you still have to have an attorney, and they're trying to get 10 grand from these guys. Nobody wants to fight the LCB. All right, and they get you over a barrel and they just pound you right in the ground. That's what LCB does.
That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's like, and these are small. This is not some major bar, some major business. There's people trying to earn a living.
We're just trying to bring the community together. Yeah, what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So anyway, we came into court today, and Judge Okrat said that there's no oral argument on this one. That's at the court's discretion. No oral argument. And these guys had submitted paperwork that I was allowed to help them with a little bit earlier in the administrative side. They just basically resubmitted that to this court. And they said, look, man, he just had hip surgery. He's trying to get a doctor. He's got a doctor, obviously. I did his hip surgery. I'm not a doctor.
It's never going to be right.
Anyway, so.
Permanent disability.
Right. So anyway, we've made quite a file here, okay? I mean, I'm still on my way around a court case. I made quite the file for these guys to take forward, but it's really hard to find people who will fight the LCB, and this is happening on the cannabis side too. I saw an email the other day where my black friends who founded the whole cannabis medical movement down there in Seattle with a couple of white guys, they got screwed, and they're trying to get a lawyer, and someone on our email chain, like the ACLU, NAACP, won't even write them back, and they've represented white bar owners before, sometimes when they want to. It's like, but what is the talismanic incantation that must be set out to get help for ordinary people these days from lawyers? There's no access. 10 grand they need just for a retainer.
Yeah.
And it's that's the state of our system.
It's insanity.
Yeah. So, anything else, guys?
I think we're good.
I think that everything's been told.
Time for me to take a nap.
We'll get you some hot milk in a sippy cup, Dad.
All right.
All right.